Welcome to the Backstory Podcast. My name is Jacob Blouse, and this is where, as we say, the heart of a story comes to life. We are going to be diving in today into the backstory from longtime members of WCC, Jeff and Alison Walls. Thank you both for being on with us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for asking us.
And when I say longtime members, Jeff, you have been here for most of your life, correct? And Alison, I know you've been here for quite some time too.
Yes.
Not quite as long as Jeff, right? But
No,
still
a little bit
a long
long,
time.
or a little bit shorter.
And this is kind of special for me to do because, Jeff, you and I have been connected now ever since I first started attending here. You were the first person I met.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yes. Actually, yes. When I came to the church about 10 years ago, I was in my early 20s going through a lot, and I walked back to a small group room, and there you were helping John Luttrell make some coffee. And you were the first person to have a conversation with me. And from that time, we've become close friends, and we even led that small group together for a little while. And so this is pretty exciting. And also, as we speak, Jeff, you are serving on the board of elders as the vice chairman at this time.
Yes.
Unless you quit that already. You're still the vice chairman, right?
Still there.
All right. Well, a great segue I like to jump straight into in these interviews is to first talk about Jesus. When did Jesus become real to you? How did he become real to you? And how did you come to have a relationship with him? So, Alison, do you want to go first on that one?
Sure. I can go first. I grew up in the church. My dad was a Baptist minister my whole entire life. And we lived in Cincinnati. We went to Indiana, which is why I'm a Hoosier today. I know. Don't hold it against me.
Oh, I can't really after this season of the Buckeyes. I really can't.
Well, Indiana did beat them the other night in basketball.
Okay.
So go Hoosiers. But so I have just, I've been in the church since day one. I can remember in Indiana, I was in my parents' bed. Why I was laying in my parents' bed, I don't know. My sister and I were in there. And I went out to my parents and I said, what do I need to do for communion? That's what I wanted to know. Like, what do I need to do to take communion? And my dad's like, well, you need to be baptized and you need to accept Jesus into your heart. And they walked me through that. And there was a book. I can't even remember what the book was called, but it was supposed to help you kind of walk through your faith process. So I do have to say I have a story about my baptism.
Yes, let's hear it.
So our church that we went to, it was in Hartsville, Indiana, small country church, and there was no baptistry at all. So my dad had been a part of another church before we went to Hartsville in Columbus. And so they had a baptistry that they were going to let us use. And they told my dad just before, like the day before my thing, they're like, the heater is broken on the baptistry. And this is like the beginning of December, and it was so cold. And it was freezing. And my dad, of course, he goes down in first. He does a little bit of talking because, he's a minister. And
Wait, ministers like to talk? I didn't know that.
All the time. All the time. They have a lot to say.
That's brand new information. No one's ever heard that before. You heard it here first. Ministers like to talk.
Yes. And so then I went, and it was like porcupine quills on your, it was just like they tingled. And then he baptized me, and I got up out of the water, and then he was still in the water for a little bit longer. So my poor dad, he was very sweet to do that. But so, my parents have always guided me in my faith steps. And I feel like I understood it when I was a teenager. I didn't appreciate it as much when I was a teenager. I felt like I was the only Christian in my class. I knew there were others, but I just kind of felt, I don't know, alone. So I didn't show it as much in high school as I should have. But then once I got into college and even beyond, I feel like my faith has grown stronger. And
yes, and So we know your parents had a big influence in that. Was there anyone else who was a big influence in your life, especially when it came to Christ?
Well, besides my dad
Mm-hmm.
being a minister, my grandfather was a minister, which would be my dad's dad.
Did he like to talk to?
Yes. Yes. I come by it honestly. It is a family trait. And then my grandmother on my mom's side, she was a huge help in that as well. So, like, I was surrounded my whole life. I mean, even aunts and uncles, and yeah, I had a lot.
But I like, as you said, as you went on into college, the faith became more of a relationship.
Yes.
And so that's great. That's great.
Yes.
So, Jeff, what is your story?
Well, I look at mine as just boring, sheltered, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No.
Because I look back on it and I see how God used different people in my life. I was born on a Tuesday, and not that Sunday, but the Sunday after, I was in church. And the reason I know that is because my grandmother would always say how if your mother would have gotten you into church on that first Sunday, you could have had perfect attendance that first year. That was always a big thing to her, you know. But
attendance was big growing up. Like, did you have like some kind of attendance chart in Sunday school growing up?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, we went. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your.
Go ahead.
So, when we were engaged, my parents invited him to go on vacation with us, and he was known for having perfect attendance in church. And so it was like, okay, we have to figure out where we're going to go while we're down in Florida because, you know, Jeff, they don't want him to lose his perfect attendance. So it was a big thing, even when we were in college and dating.
Yeah, I was blessed with some good health. I mean, that's a big part of it. And so, we always were at church, and yes, they did used to do a thing here where they would keep track of the attendance, and each year they would recognize you for having perfect attendance. And I think at one point I was up over 20 years.
Wow.
And so,
That's impressive.
I was, you have to be somewhat healthy. And I do remember a few times being sick, and then by afternoon, I was in here for evening service. So anyway, those are things that are they important? Not so much the having the perfect attendance, but being regular, being at church. This was home to me. And I had lots of people who poured into me over the years. I accepted Christ as my Savior and was baptized when I was 8 years old, but my grandmother had a really big influence on me. I remember going over to her house, and before I could even read, she would be telling me, go over and get that Bible underneath the table over there and bring it over here. So I would go get a Bible underneath the end table and bring it to her.
Wow.
And we're going to learn the, whatever verse it was. We're going to learn the Lord's Prayer. We're going to memorize the books of the New Testament. And so she would recite them and I would repeat them, and she was determined to teach me these things because they were important to her. And she wanted me to understand that. So even long before I understood what it meant to follow Jesus, I was learning. And
right.
I was really fortunate to have grandmother, to have people here in this church who took an interest in me, even at a young age, that poured into me.
From day one, you were in this church?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
who baptized you?
Keith Dimbath did.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Was Keith the senior minister at the time, or
no? He was not.
He was still the associate.
He was the associate, and we did it over in the old worship center, which is now the where the Kid City theater is. You can't see the baptistry anymore, but I guess if you go behind the wall there, you can still
got
see
the big hole there.
Yes, the hole is there. And so, I was baptized in that baptistry there, and I still remember a lot of that. I mean, I was 8 years old, so I remember meeting with Keith. He came over to our house and we talked a little bit about it. And I will say that even though I was 8 years old, I understood what I was doing, but to the extent that I understand now is, yeah, no. I mean, I understood that, you know what, I'm a sinner. I've done wrong things. I have broken a relationship with God, and He offers me a way of fixing that.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem a lot of people have when trying to make the decision for Christ. They think you have to have the level of understanding that we have now versus what you had as a kid, and that's completely false. There are the basic things that you need to understand, like you're a sinner, Christ offers a way. And so I was baptized at a young age too, but it took me till about my teen years to start developing a stronger relationship with Christ versus what I knew as a kid, but still wouldn't trade that for anything.
And I've heard the example used before, you don't give babies steak. I love steak, all right? Medium rare.
Amen.
I love steak.
He's begging.
But you don't give an infant steak. You could give an infant milk. And until that infant can grow to where they can take on more solid foods and be able to handle that. And I think the same thing is true in our spiritual walk. We start off on the milk, but here's the thing: if you're 20 years old and you're still on milk and you've not moved to the solid foods, you might need to stop and take a step back and say, okay, what do I need to do? What responsibility am I taking for my relationship with Christ?
Right.
And sometimes it takes each of us a little bit longer to do that. But there were different times in my life where I felt like, I was growing in my faith, but then I would just be more flat. And then all of a sudden I would have a little bit of a spike where somebody came into my life and provided influence to me and explained things a little bit better to me and helped me to learn. And
keeping with that analogy of milk and steak, I think a lot of us have that same story. We kind of get on this thin line, and all of a sudden we get hungry. And I think that's the correct term to use. We get hungry for the Word, we get hungry for God, and we want more, and we crave more. And so, and I, like you said, as kids, you're not going to be on the steak yet, right? And that's what I love about Cheryl, our children's minister. She does what's called the splash class for kids who are interested in wanting to know more about baptism. They're not committing to be baptized, but they're at the age where they're asking questions, and she's able to sit down and say, here is what you need to know. And even the parents attend that class a lot of times. They even get to hear what you need to know. We have seen a lot of testimonies begin with stuff like that. And so who are some more influential people in your life, though?
Well, I tell you what, I did grow up during this time when we had the VBS, and when I did VBS years ago, we had it over 2 weeks. So we would have like Monday through Thursday of 1 week, and then we would come back the next week and do Monday through Thursday. And I always remember those weeks so fondly. But I remember Mabel Merkel would be up there directing the music, and I remember one time her pulling me up there and having me stand on the front pew and helping lead with the singing. I was probably 5 or 6 years old or something like that. I was really young, but I do remember that. But I also remember, though, her being in some of the Sunday school classes and teaching us. And then when I got into junior high, Hugh and Joellen Vance were in there. And Joellen is such she's got such knowledge of the scripture and the background of things. And, at that time, I don't know that I appreciated it as much until later, because fast forward ahead, she and I are married, and we've been asked to help out in the junior high class. And so our first Sunday in there was Hunter's first Sunday at church, and we started helping out in there, and we're in there for a number of years in the junior high class. But the cool thing about that was I was getting to serve alongside Hugh and Joellen, and then John and Amy Luttrell as well, and I loved it when when Amy and when Joellen would take turns teaching, because I'm sitting back here and I'm like, all right, I'm learning things. I mean, I learned a lot growing up, and then you go off to college, and I think in college it's one of those times where your faith still grows, but you're so focused on other things that you don't you don't see that that accelerated growth that we talk about, where it spikes up, that hunger like you talked about. But once we got in there, and it's going to sound so odd because it was middle school. I'm going to middle school, and and especially with Joellen and Amy, they'd get in there and they would give some background information, and I was like, I never really thought of it that way before. And what it did for me was it inspired more of that hunger, and I'm like, I want to learn more of this. I mean, I knew all the Bible stories growing up, but when you put them all together and you see that it's all one big story, and you hear the background of the culture back then, and you can understand the timeline, and you see how it all comes together, you can't help but get hungry about that.
It brings the Bible to life in a new way.
It really did. And so I guess going back to middle school for a second time really sparked something for me. And that's one of the reasons why I have stayed in there. I enjoy being able to pour into the students. I get to teach sometimes in the middle school on Sunday mornings. Most of my time is spent in the high school class, but I enjoy filling in those gaps that the kids may not be aware of between the individual stories to help them put it all together. And but people like that really influenced me and got that spark.
Absolutely. And I know Joellen, Amy, they taught in junior high for years. And I remember Tony Brockmeyer, our student minister, I remember him saying, like, the day they leave, that's going to be, it's like we have great people who teach in there now, but it's like, it's hard when you lose that influential people who have served in that place for years. But
we do have some great people that jump in there.
And they jumped in.
And they're making the same difference in those kids' lives.
They're getting to do and grow that same legacy that
Yes.
Joellen and Amy have grown over the years. And so it's pretty special to see that cycle. But I remember the day Joellen and Amy said, it's about time we step down. And Tony's like, hate to lose them, but you understand. And it's exciting to give other people opportunities to serve with the youth. And so you have already mentioned some things about college. You both went to Wilmington College, correct?
We did. We did.
That's where you met, correct?
Yes.
So now I'm interested in the story of how you met.
Who's doing that one?
Go for it.
Okay. So I had two roommates. No, I had three, but two of them that I hung out with more. And so there were the three of us, and then they had three guys that they hung out with, Jeff being one, and then two other guys that he was friends with. And so we would do things together. And one story that I tell people, we went to Kings Island one summer. I want to say it was between my sophomore and junior year.
This was a group of us that were going.
Yes, the six of us. So it was between his freshman and sophomore year, my sophomore and junior year. And we went as this group. Well, we would when you go into roller coasters, it's pairs.
Right.
Well, most of the day I was with one of our other friends. Well, this one time we went on the Adventure Express, I can remember, and I got paired with Jeff. And I'm like, why would they put me with Jeff? I don't know this guy. I mean, I knew him, but I didn't really know him.
You can see someone's true colors on a roller coaster too.
I don't remember the ride. I just remember that I did not want to ride with him. And so we rode, and I don't remember much. But that day, one of our friends worked the Sky Zone the Extreme Sky Flyer.
Yeah, it's the big giant swing that they pull you up.
And you have to pull the cord and then you swing. So we had a friend who would get us on for free. And one of the guys, he's like, no. And then my two friends, the girls, were like, no. I thought, I'm going to be I'm going to be tough. I'm going to prove that I'm not a chicken. So our other friend and Jeff and I, we go. And I'm in the middle of these two guys. And so, yes, I like to say, we took the plunge that first day together.
Wow. What a metaphor.
But didn't really know each other. And because we had common friends, but yeah, we didn't know each other too well. But that's one of the first memories we have of doing something together.
Yes. Well, in my junior year, I was dating someone, but my friends were like, Allison, because we were sitting around our apartment one day at dinner, and they're like, Allison, of the guys that we are friends with, we know you're dating so-and-so. Who would you date of our friends that, you know? And so I sat there and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, this one, you know. So I started to think about Jeff and the qualities that I had seen in him. He worked at the Christian bookstore here in town. I knew he went to church with his grandmother. And so I thought, you know, he kind of aligns more with what I believe and all that. And so I'm like, you know, it would be Jeff. I said, I would date Jeff. Well, he kind of got interesting in my eyes after that. I kind of was like,
you had to verbally say it before it starts.
Yeah, yeah. It was like,
Yes.
it like opened up the way to like, oh, I see him differently now. Okay. And so, yeah, he asked me, well, my relationship ended and he asked me out and we went on our first date and it's just kind of going on from there.
How long did you two go out before you got married?
About almost 3 years, one day shy of 3 years. So
Yes.
that was that's another story there. So we had gone out on a date, but we weren't dating exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
We had just gone out together to a movie, and that was on September 23rd of 1998.
That's a good memory.
Well, and this is why it's easy to remember. So it's because we were talking one evening, and one of our friends, our common friends, had said, "Oh, you guys are going to end up getting married," you know. And we're talking to each other on the phone, and so it was one of her roommates said, "I just know it. You guys are going to end up getting married," and so we just started. Okay, so if we're going to get married, now keep in mind, we're not even a couple yet. Well, if we're going to get married, we might as well pick out a date. And so we started look, okay, so let's see here. You'll graduate then, and then I'll graduate here. And oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did it around the anniversary of our first date? And so we picked September 22nd, 2001, which would be like almost 3 years later.
To the day, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not meaning anything by it, just being funny. Well, when we finally started dating and we got a little more serious and we finally got engaged and we're looking at a date and we said, why don't we just keep the one that we picked all those years ago, which was again, 1 day shy of 3 years to the day of our first date. And so we like to tell people, yeah, we picked out our wedding date before we were even dating.
Yes.
Wow. And who came up with the idea to pick that date first?
I don't remember. We were just talking and flipping through calendars and just saying, okay, well, if they say we're going to get married, then we better pick out a date, you know. But we opted to keep that because at the time it made sense. And
Yeah.
So we actually dated for right around 3 years before we finally got married.
So fast forward after college, you're married. Did you both end up in the fields that you originally set out for?
No.
I know a little bit about that story.
No. So when I've been through college twice. Mm-hmm. My first time through, I was going for my social work degree. And at that time, they did not do internships until like you're almost done.
Yeah.
And so it was my spring semester of my junior year, and I went and did an internship in Hillsboro. And it was with the Board of Mental Retardation and MRDD.
That's what it was at the time, yeah.
Yes. And so I loved the clients that were there and working with them, but the type of work that was social work, I was like, I can't do this. I knew it would take a mental toll very quickly.
God bless those people.
Yes, I've said that before. And so I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, because he and I were starting to date and, getting more serious. And so I thought, I can't all of a sudden switch my major into my junior year of college, because who knows how much longer than I would have to go. So I stuck with it. I graduated with my social work degree and had no clue what I was going to do. And my mom worked for an attorney in Hillsborough, while her husband was a funeral director at one of the local funeral homes. And they had talked to me about working at the funeral home. And the funny thing was, in high school, you take those aptitude tests.
Yes.
Well, funeral director was one of them. I'm like, never.
I heard that's kind of a dead-end business.
Oh.
So I ended up there for 9 years. I worked in the funeral home for 9 years. I did not do any of the work. I did the paperwork.
You did the
I was
paperwork.
the paperwork person. No, couldn't do that. So then I was kind of feeling the stuff I did mattered, but nobody knew who I was or what, I was behind the scenes, which is okay, but I didn't feel like it mattered that much. And so
it wasn't your calling.
It wasn't my calling. And I wanted to make a difference in lives.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I want to be a teacher, because I love those aha moments with your students. And so Jeffrey, oh, God bless him. So Hunter was probably 2. He became a single dad for 2 years almost. I went to school a lot of times at night because of just the way Wilmington College worked their classes. And I worked during the day. And if I wasn't in class, I was at the library studying for the classes that I was taking. So, he supported me through 2 years of college again, and I got my degree in education, and I've been in it ever since.
And you're now at Wilmington Christian Academy?
I am, and I teach 4th grade.
Ooh,
so
that's a fun age.
Most of the time. Most of the time.
There might have been a little sarcasm in my voice when I said that, but no, you've been there how long now?
This is my 8th year.
8th year.
I taught 4 years in 1st grade and then 4 years in 4th grade.
All right, and both your boys go there, I know, and we'll talk about your boys here in a minute, but that's pretty special. So you've seen Wilmington Christian Academy grow quite a bit from where it used to be.
Oh my goodness!
And so it's pretty exciting what's going on there right now. There's
a lot of stuff.
A lot of
stuff going on.
Really growing.
Yes.
That's awesome. Jeff, how'd you end up in the field you're in?
Well, I studied business administration. So I graduated with a degree in business administration and a concentration in entrepreneurship. I work in solid waste now. I don't know anybody who grows up saying, I want to be a solid waste coordinator when I grow up.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're wasting your time?
Well, I remember
all those wasted years.
Well, okay, sorry, I interrupt a lot.
No.
I apologize, sweetie. But when he first told me about this, I thought it was poop. I was like, it is not poop.
That's solid, not liquid.
It's not poop.
No, it's not.
You heard it here first.
You never know what's going to come out of my mouth.
But the story behind that is really an interesting one because, yes, I graduated with a degree in business. And I remember going in the first couple of years I worked in the department, and schools would call us in to do on career day to come in and tell about our job. And it's like, there's nobody here who wants to know what I do. Actually, what I do, we do a lot of the recycling in the county, and I do use a lot of the things that I learned in college. I'm able to put into practice a lot of those skills that deal with business in the work that I do. We don't do the trash collection and things like that, although those are very valuable jobs that people do, and we count on those people to be there and provide those. But I do get to work with some of those folks and helping them provide recycling opportunities and trying to reduce waste that we have. But the way I got into the job was very interesting. I had no idea what I was going to do at graduation. And I remember one of the traditions at Wilmington was that when you went to graduate, most people decorated their mortarboard, the little funny hat that you wear on your head. And so I didn't know what to put on my mortarboard. And somebody gave the suggestion, well, market yourself. Isn't that what you studied in college? I went to 4 years of college to learn how to decorate a mortarboard to market myself. And I put on my mortarboard for hire, had it painted up really nice, pretty large, so that as I'm walking up to get my diploma, people knew I was available for hire. That next day, so I graduated on a Saturday. That next Sunday, I was here at church, and I ran into Sandra Weaver.
Okay.
Sandra and Charlie, longtime members. Charlie, former elder, and Charlie just passed away recently. But they had a big impact on my life growing up as well, and continued to. Yes. And anyway, Sandra came up to me and congratulated me on my graduation, and she said, "Do you have anything She said, "Did you decorate your mortarboard?" I said, "I sure did. I put for hire on it." And she's like, "Oh, you don't have anything lined up yet?" And I said, "Well, not yet. I've got my resume into a few places." And we've got a position in our office that you should come apply for. And so we talked a little bit about it, and I thought, yeah, why not? So I went ahead and applied there. And long story short, I was hired in there as the education specialist, which meant that I got to go into schools and do presentations and talk about recycling. And so, yeah, the rest is history. Sandra later on, she was my boss then.
Wow. So
she hired me in there, and then about 6 months later, she left to take another job, and someone else came in and replaced her. And then about another 2 years after that, then I was hired in as the coordinator, and I've been there at the county I'm on my 23rd year now. So that's how I got to where I am. I love what I do. I enjoy a lot of the people I work with, and I get to do a little bit of different things every day.
So you work for the county. So literally some of my tax dollars are going to waste. Is that
Our department doesn't get tax dollars. We have other sources of revenue.
Okay. All right. Well, that opened my eyes. I can't make that joke anymore.
Sorry, man.
All
We're
right.
just solidly wasting away.
Yes. And not in the way you thought. I'm so glad you told me about that, because that's funny. So fast forward several years, your boys. Tell us about your boys, because it's kind of a big year for one of your kids.
Well, Ryder, I'll start with him first. He is a 6th grader, so he's now in junior high. That took a lot out of this mom. Oh, my goodness.
Big transition year.
Yes, because he was like at Wilmington Christian Academy, the elementary is, pretty much together, and then the high school and middle school are kind of separate. Mm-hmm. So you don't see him as much. So, I mean, for however many years, like I've seen Ryder all day, every day, and, run into him everywhere. And so this is the year that I don't see him as much, and that's kind of
and Ryder's our baby. We've got
Ryder's
2 boys,
our baby.
And Ryder's the youngest.
He's 12. So the thing is, they are as different as night and day. How 2 people can create 2 different creatures. I don't know. They are just completely different. It's just amazing. So let's see. Ryder is into Upward.
Yes.
He has Upward games tomorrow. and video games. That is his life right now.
He's more of your artsy one.
He is our artsy one.
A little more creative.
Yes. He loves to draw. He loves to make music. He's tried guitar and Joellen, once again, Joellen. She tried to teach him piano. And Ryder is the type that he wants to know it now. He doesn't want to have to like gradually learn it.
I don't want to build that muscle memory. I just want to just know it.
Yes. Yes. So he gets frustrated, but so he's done a little bit of music. But yes, he's our creative one. He watches, he'll tell you how to build things, how to do things, which I never had the chance to meet Jeff's grandfather, but I feel like he kind of has his mind. Like your grandpa could create many things. I mean, just looking at our house, you can see that. But that's Ryder got that.
That's awesome.
Now Hunter is a senior, so this is an even bigger thing for this mama. And shockingly, I've only cried once.
Oh.
So, I mean, that's huge for me. I cry all the time, for those who know me. Or I cry over everything. And so Hunter, yeah, so far I'm doing good.
Graduation's coming though.
Yeah, she talks about the boys and being different, but it's it really is refreshing because yes, Ryder is he's got the more technical mind. He loves to know how things work, and he won't hesitate to take things apart and to try to put them back together again.
And we hope that they get back together.
We hope that they get back together and that they work.
Or else we're putting out money to get some new ones.
A lot of times they do. He's been able to fix a lot of stuff that we can't. And then Hunter is the more vocal one when it comes to he'll step up, and he's kind of developed into a leader of sorts. And he's the one that's probably a little more athletic. He enjoys playing his sports, and he gets really enthusiastic about that. But his mind works a little differently. He's more of a relational type of individual. You know, while Ryder's more of a technical mind, Hunter's more of a relationship. You know, and wanting to know how people think and how they feel, and so it's interesting watching the two of them converse with one another, but also seeing how they use those skills, those gifts, to do different things.
This is going to sound crazy, but so the first Sunday I came here over 10 years ago, you were the first person I met after small group. Your son comes in. You said, "Hey, meet my son, Hunter." 7 years old.
Wow.
Hunter was 7 years old. I've known him. So Ryder, I met Ryder too. He had to have been what?
A year.
One.
Yeah, there's 6 years between them.
You were holding him. So I've known them that long.
Wow.
And
you've seen him grow up.
And so, the last fall of 2022, you said Hunter has developed into more of a leader. And we did something here for the first time called a 5x5. And for those who don't know what that is 5 speakers on a Sunday morning giving their best 5 minutes. And I remember in a staff meeting, we came up with some potential young people, and Hunter was one of the first ones we said he'd be great at this. And without hesitation, he said yes, and he got up there and kind of blew my mind. I'm like, I've known him since he was 7 years old, and now he's up here sharing the Word of God. And that's huge.
Yeah.
And that is huge. And just to see him develop that, and now he's getting ready for life after high school.
Yes. We don't know where he's going.
That's all right.
He's got several places that he's looking at, but yeah. It's hard for me to imagine.
It is, but it's exciting too, because those are very impressionable years. I know we talk about kids growing up and when they're in elementary and they're in high school, but that college age time, because is really impressionable, because you're making that transition from being a kid to being an adult, and you're solidifying some of those beliefs that you've grown up with. In some cases,
some of them are put to the test.
Exactly. In some cases, you're they are those beliefs that you grew up with. You're either really accepting them or you're looking other directions, and you're trying to find truth in other ways, and regardless of how you were raised. And so, it is an exciting time. It's also it can be a nerve-wracking time for parents because you're letting them loose, and but at the same time, you've got to trust that God is going to guide them, and that the things that they have learned that you've tried to instill in them, that He's going to remind them of those things, and that's reassuring to us as parents, because we know that we're not releasing him alone.
Yeah,
He's going to be taking that Holy Spirit with him where he goes.
Yep, and you've even seen some of that stuff put to test the older they get, even through the high school years, like being willing to say, yes, I will speak in front of a congregation and a bunch of people even watching online. I will speak about the gospel. That's huge.
I don't know if I could have done that at that age, and we've had several of our youth that have stepped up and have done that,
Yes.
and I'm thoroughly impressed with
Well,
that.
and a great opportunity your boys have had is to grow up in a church that's had great children's programming
Yes.
and great youth programming, and that's the Wilmington Church of Christ. I will make that plug multiple times.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and it even starts at the young age. I mean, the elementary, or not even elementary, but the
Toddler.
Yes,
Yeah.
and in the cradle room. I mean, we've got Mr. Gene and Sharon are in there, and I mean, how many churches can boast that they've got a male who is in charge of their cradle room, who has been doing it for close to 40
I don't think
years?
I have ever seen a nursery worker like Mr. Gene who has befriended those he's brought up in the nursery, because he's been close to your boys for as long as they've been alive.
I think that was one of the things, like with Ryder moving up to junior high, because I mean, Mr. Gene for 17 years. I mean, that's like hard for me to believe. 17 years he's had our boys at some point on a Sunday night. First it was Hunter, because we started with the small groups almost
we
immediately
participated with small groups. So on Sunday evenings, or actually Sunday late afternoon into evening, we have junior high and high school small groups, and we've been able to be leaders in this.
That's probably one of the biggest
small
areas
groups.
you two have been involved. You've been involved in many areas serving, but you two have done that probably the longest.
And I tell you what, it's so rewarding, because you develop relationships with kids when they're 6th or 7th grade, and you stay with them until they graduate. And then when they graduate, they still reach out to you, and you get invited to their weddings, and you get to see how they go into
babies.
life. One of my original small group members is now mayor of a small community over in Warren County. And so, Mitchell, if you see this, congratulations, buddy. You're going to do great. But
It's crazy.
But we couldn't have done that with having little kids if somebody hadn't stepped up and said, "Hey, I'll watch them." So every Sunday afternoon, Mr. Gene would come in and hang out with Hunter and Ryder, and Hunter's a senior. Mr. Gene comes to his basketball games. I mean, it's like another grandparent, and Hunter has some great grandparents that come in, and they're part of his life, but he's got a bonus grandparent
It
now.
just shows you how important being a part of a church community is, because Mr. Gene comes in and gives you two the opportunities to invest in other kids' life, and you're still connected with them.
Yes.
And it's quite a commitment to stay with them from junior high all the way through high school. I mean, you're talking 6-7 years as being their small group leader there for them every Sunday night during the school year, and even more. And what is, you kind of already talked about this, but what is maybe one of your favorite memories from being a small group leader? Or maybe some. Maybe it's more of a overall, this is my favorite thing about this.
Well, probably one of my favorite moments. And Amy Luttrell and I finished with one of my small groups. My girls graduated out, and she was maybe a year or two into hers. And so Tony was like, would you want to join Amy with hers and help her out with hers? I'm like, yeah, that would be great. And we had probably 6 or more girls. Well, they had started a tradition. They would get together every Christmas. So we would have a Christmas party at Amy's. I have a bedroom at Amy Luttrell's house and John and Amy's house. I call it my bedroom. And so we would go stay. But the one thing that I loved was we would try to think of things to do. Amy was like, let's kidnap our girls. And I'm like, okay. And so we talked to their parents and said, this is what we want to do.
This is very important for people to know. They talked to the parents.
Yes, we had their permission. We talked to the parents. So they helped us. They got like several of the girls in one location. And so we drove up in the church van and we got to the house and we walk in the door and the girls are like, what are you doing here? And we're like, we're kidnapping you. And we had to go around to a couple of different houses. We got everybody. We headed to Young's Dairy and we did a corn maze and, all this stuff. Our girls loved it.
Yeah.
They're like, when are you going to kidnap us again? So we did do it one more time.
That's not a sentence that's not a question that gets asked often.
No, that's not. That's not. And so we did kidnap them one more time one summer and we went and we had a picnic at might have been Cowan. I think it was Cowan. And then Hugh met us with his pontoon boat and we went out. So,
wow.
So yes, kidnapping my small group, that was one of the best memories I have.
Wow. And that's something that they will talk about.
I hope
Probably
so.
Still talk about.
I hope
I'm
so.
sure. I'm sure. What about you? What do you have?
Well, I got 2. The first one was probably my first or second small group meeting with my original group. And so I had these 6th and 7th grade boys, and I'm like, okay, how does this work? What am I, when you're a small group leader for the first time, you're trying to figure out a rhythm and what do I do? I don't really know them. They don't know me yet. And oh my goodness, they were a little wild because they were young. And I remember we were in a room which used to be the old library over in the fellowship hall, and it had nice carpeting that had really good padding. I mean, it was really soft. And one of the boys pulls out a bag of cheese balls, and he called them cheesy poofs. They always called them cheesy poofs. And they got those out, and you can imagine as they all reach into these bags, their fingers are covered in cheesy poofs, cheese balls, and they're eating these things, and they're dropping them on the floor, and they're stepping on them. They don't mean to, but I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I'm going to be here all night trying to figure out how to clean this up. And so small group ends, and they leave, and I'm like finding a vacuum cleaner, trying to clean this up. I got to get this out of the carpet, and I'm thinking to myself, I think I had their attention for maybe 5 minutes of a 1 hour span, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And I remember talking to Tony Brockmeyer, and I said, Tony, I don't know if I have what it takes to do this. And I remember him saying, yeah, you do. Don't sweat it. Those are junior high boys. It'll be fine. And so as the weeks went on, we developed a routine. They got to know me, and I got to know them a little more. But we would do snacks at a certain time, and no cheesy poofs. They had to stay out of the classroom. But, I got to know those boys and got to see them all graduate and then start over again. And the cool thing about it was when I started over the second time, one of the young men, Luke Swearingen, who was in my original group as one of the students, one of the ones with the cheesy poofs, joined me as a co-leader of the next small group. And so we stayed together, and we led a small group all the way through till they graduated.
Wow.
But during that time, Luke and his wife Lily got married as well. And so I still got to see him continue to grow up, but to be able to serve alongside somebody that you got to have as a student. And then now I'm on my third time through. And this time I actually am with Rich Cummins. So it's now it's an even different experience. But I love being in there with Rich because he's got so many cool things that he shares with the boys, and he'll bring in all of his Rubik's cubes that aren't just regular cubes. They're and I don't know, some of them have, I don't know how many sides to them. But the kids they love that kind of stuff. And so it's really neat being able to cycle back through. But, that doesn't happen unless you deal with the cheesy poofs and all of the other, in the 5 minutes of attention span when they're 6th and 7th graders, because when you do that, you develop a rapport with them.
Yeah.
And then as they become more mature, they can handle a little bit longer time and more important discussions and deeper conversations. And then when they get to be in high school, sometimes they even seek you out for advice on things.
Outside of the Sunday.
Yes. And you're like, okay, all right. Never would have envisioned that 4 years ago, but now, so having done it a few times, I've got the ability to look back and say, okay, even though I've got 7th graders now, I know that here in a few years, I'm going to be able to have some of those conversations because we've developed the relationship.
And of course, our student minister, Tony, he does such a great job on
does.
equipping small group leaders. And I always say he does it right because the kids don't just look to Tony. They look at the small group leaders. Tony's developed a great team, and he gives the small group leaders flexibility on what they can do with their students.
Yes.
Like, just this past year, I was walking around during small groups, and like during the fall, there is one small group leader carving pumpkins with her small group. You go to another one, Jeff Myers and Jake Green, they'll take their guys out the skyline. And then there was one week I walked in and I'm like, where's Rich and Jeff's class, our group? And we opened the door and you guys are playing board games.
Yes.
You have like I think Monopoly out there and stuff. And I'm like, but that's you're
those are
putting in the
cutthroat.
time.
Those are cutthroat games too. I mean it. They get into it.
I've had the pleasure of serving alongside Beth Green, leading the student impact worship team for 9 years now.
Wow.
That's crazy to think about. But even within that, seeing students step up to sing and then getting more comfortable singing.
Yes.
And we've seen students cycle through now. So I feel like we're a little bit of a small group of our own, seeing students train up in worship. And I just will always brag about our small groups and our students here at the church. And that's the Wilmington Church of Christ, 909 West Locust Street, Wilmington, Ohio. But so you two have served in many places over the years. I mean, Jeff, you once a month even serve on camera on a camera crew, and so does your son Hunter. And as long as you two have been here and you have served in so many areas, what are some of the ways you have seen the church grow over the years to where we are now? What excites you about where we are now? What's some of the ways you have seen our church grow? And I'm not just talking numerically, of course.
For me, especially being here now 45 years.
He's telling his age.
I am.
Yes.
I am. I have seen a lot of things change. But you know what? The one thing that always stays the same is the gospel that we preach, that we talk about, that we cling to. The way that we worship does change, but who we worship never does.
Yes.
And so one of the things though that I feel that has really changed since when I was younger, or at least the perception that I had when I was younger, was we tell people, come as you are.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what you're wearing. Come in and worship in spirit and in truth. And I think back to a time when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And I was over at my grandparents' house for the afternoon. It was a Sunday afternoon, so after church, we went over to my grandparents' house because my parents had something going on. And so I was staying there, and my grandparents always went to church on Sunday evening. But my parents were supposed to be back before that time that my grandparents needed to leave. Well, my parents were running late. This is before the age of cell phones where they can just pick up the phone and said, we're running behind. And so my grandmother came in and she says, okay, get ready because we're gonna be going to church here soon. And I remember what I had on at the time. I had on a pair of blue jeans, and it wasn't even one of the nicer pair of blue jeans. And I had on a red Coca-Cola sweatshirt. And I remember looking at my grandma and saying, I can't go wearing this. We're going to have to stop by the house and I can change. And they're like, well, we don't have a key to get into the house. No, you wear what you've got. And I mean, I stressed over that. And grandma came up to me and she said, you know what? And this has always stuck with me. She said, God would much rather have you wearing that sitting in the church than dressed in a suit sitting at home. And that always stuck with me. And whether or not I've had, whether or not I needed to be dressed up to come to church was a thing or just something that I perceived myself because we just always were at the time. I think that's something that I can look at now and say, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much. And I'm not saying that you should never dress up. And hey, if you want to dress up and that helps you to worship God more, then do it. But if you're comfortable in just what you have, knowing that, hey, I can focus on giving God praise and reading the scripture in just a hoodie and jeans, then do that too. That's not what God's looking at. He's looking at how you're approaching him and with what heart that you have. And so that's one thing I think we are a lot more open now to letting people know we want you to come as you are. Don't feel you have to come in here and go out and buy a suit to come to church here and to worship God.
Yeah, absolutely. And even from the time I've been here, I've seen that become more evident, right? We've always been that way, but people, when they meet us out in public or they get on our website, that should be evident that they see we care about you as a person, not how you're dressed. And so what about you?
What do I see as like how we've grown and what's making us grow?
Yeah.
I think our church reaches every age group. I know that, Bruce Stauffer has the Sunday school class for the older people. I'm
advanced
saying that
in years. You don't have to say the O word.
I didn't know how to word that because I don't want to disrespect them. So older, and but then I have seen with the on down to the kids, because so many churches, it seems like you're either really, really young. You have the young families with the parents that are just starting out, or you have the older people and not together.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen Cheryl bring in so many families that are young. And so there is that hope of continuing. They're the next generation coming in. But we still have those older ones in to mentor at times,
prepare
the way.
And I will say this: I've never seen a place that's where the older adults support our kids as much as here at this church. I really feel that we've got a great student ministry, we've got a great children's ministry. Tony and Cheryl do a wonderful job bringing families in, but we also have some of our older adults who are more experienced, that have been in the faith longer, that really come alongside these kids. And even if they don't, come and talk to them all that, they want to see those children grow up in the faith. And they're so generous with their resources.
Even whenever kids get on stage, whether it's Impact Worship students leading worship, or we have some of our high school and junior high students bringing a 5x5 message, there is a level of excitement from even everyone in church. They're like, this is what we need to see more of.
And that the kids feed off that.
Ways. Yeah.
They feed off that, knowing that they've got the acceptance of
There's
the
a place
generation ahead of them. And they get, those folks get excited as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, because it was John and Amy Hugh and Joelle and Jeff and I. So there were 6 of us in junior high for I don't know how many years until you and John broke off to, do the more college age ministry. And, but we would take the kids to Believe, which is a CIY. It was middle school during the February. I think it was usually in February. And, so many times we would tell our kids, if money is an issue, it's not an issue, because there was somebody in the church, and I'm going to guess it was the older generation, who were willing and wanted to give money to help so that the kids could go and not have that limitation put on them.
Because there's a mindset, they might say, we can't physically go and chaperone. We can't do that, but we can be a part in supporting them.
And help you get there.
And just a great example. Great example. This past Saturday was our first Upwards program, game day, for this season. And there, I won't say their names because I did not ask permission. But there was a couple that has been at this church for years. They're a part of that older generation. It was their first time coming to an Upward game because they knew someone who was playing. And they walked in and they seen just, this place was just, it's jam-packed here. Just hundreds and hundreds of people waiting to come in for the next game, exiting the game. And they're seeing these kids play, and the coaches cheer them on, and the parents cheer them on, and the gospel is shared with them at halftime. And they walked out of that, and they caught me at the door. And I kid you not, they said, "This is why I love our church."
Wow.
He said, "This is what it's all about."
Yes.
And I'm like, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Investing in the next generation. But in order to do that, it takes every generation.
It does. And those are the people who helped raise me in the faith here at this church. And I know that, as we get older, we may not have the energy or the physical ability to be able to do the same thing we did when we were younger. But those people have found ways to continue to pour into our kids, and I'm so thankful for that generation, and because they do play such a big part here at this church of even just encouraging and the servers that we have, they'll bring the younger kids along and mentor them and show them how to do it and get them involved, and that's so important.
And we have, and I know with Jeff, with you being on the eldership, how many times have we talked about? It feels like, especially over the past couple of years, there's just been a surge, especially of younger families coming in the doors of this church.
Yes.
And we have just been seeing God. And what's amazing is they're coming in, and what is the biggest draw for them? How we invest in their young ones. Right?
Yes.
They know, and they appreciate they're going to get great gospel teaching and service, of course. But they want their kids raised in the Lord, and they know they're going to get that here. And there's other great churches in town who I will vouch for their children's program. But it's so exciting to see young couples coming in with young kids and saying, this is a church we can raise our kids in.
Yes, absolutely. And a church that we can stay at even after, because, everybody is
we
pulling
invest
together.
in all generations. But we recognize the importance of investing in the future generations. And so as we bring our conversation to the end, I will ask this of each of you. If you could give a word of encouragement to somebody who is on the edge of discovering a relationship with Christ, they're thinking about it, because there are several people within this church who are just on the edge. We're actually seeing someone get baptized here this coming Sunday. What is the word of encouragement you would give them?
I'll let you go first. I have to think this through.
Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is give it a try. Try Jesus. What do you have to lose? And I think that there's, I would say, a number of us, all of us can vouch that, he's never let us down. Don't put your faith in people. I mean, as much as I love our church and our congregation and the people that are in it, we will let you down. At some point, somebody will do something that upsets you or that lets you down. We're human, and but Jesus never will. So Don't put your faith in the church. Put your faith in the Christ. Put it into Jesus. And allow yourself, though, to be loved and embraced by the people of the church. But as they extend grace to you, also remember you've got to extend grace to them because we're all going to make mistakes. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus extended that grace to us. And so he wants us to do the same too. So my advice is try it. Find out about Jesus. Find out what he did, and then try to follow him. One of the things I try to tell our students is, our purpose in life, our mission in life is not to get to heaven, because a mission means that you set a goal and you are working towards something. And, heaven isn't something you'll ever do enough good works for. It's a gift that's freely given by Jesus Christ. Therefore, it can't be a goal, and it can't be a mission. So therefore, what is your goal? Your goal in life is to become more like Jesus each and every day. He says, follow me, follow in my footsteps, do as I do. And so, if we follow Jesus and we give it a try, your life is going to be better. It's going to be more fulfilling, not necessarily easier, but it's going to be better. Yeah. And so try it. If especially if things aren't going well and things aren't working the way that you want them to go, try it. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have problems, but you will be better equipped to handle those and to put them into perspective.
And also, you will have problems, but that doesn't mean you have to deal with them alone.
Exactly.
Just like we've been talking about this whole time, the importance of church family and that community to help you with that process. Yes.
Well, you kind of hit on what I was going to say.
You can repeat it.
So, within the past few years, I've had some struggles with situations that are out of my control. And, God, I can't imagine what those struggles would have been like if I didn't have God on my side. Yeah. It's still not easy, but at least I know I'm not alone. I can go to him. And there are the moments where it's like, oh, thank you, God. For those moments where, things just, you hope that they will turn out, and it's like you pray and you pray and you pray. And, it's on God's time. Yeah. It's not your own time, which is the one thing that I struggle with. I am not a patient person. I know not to pray for patience. But God's time is always the best time. And so, put God on your side, because when you have those tough times, you're not alone. You're not alone. And life is so much better. And I have to say, we've talked about so many things, but God has blessed me more than I could imagine. And sometimes I don't feel like I deserve it. And so I'm like, why? But his blessings are immense and they're beautiful. Yes.
And she says she doesn't pray for patience because we have a little joke our family and with some of our friends as well, that when you pray for patience, you're going to be given opportunities to show patience.
Just when I pray, like, I need to be more graceful in my life, and then God will bring me across people that I can show that to.
Right.
I think, why?
Yes. Oh, I prayed for this. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think that God tries to trick us into those things, but we are more aware whenever we're in our walk with Christ. We're going to be more aware of those opportunities that we have to demonstrate how we are being more like Jesus, and to also expose areas that we need to work on.
And that's done through the Holy Spirit. And a lot of times we think, oh, I'm recognizing this, like you just said. Well, a lot of that is the Holy Spirit is opening your eyes to recognize what that is. And so, and I know he played a big part in what you've been going through. And I know you've had a great church family, and you got many dear friends in this church that has been a part of your life and helping you through.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I love about this church. now I'm going to cry, is their family. Their family. Mr. Gene and Sharon, it's like my kids have more grandparents. Yeah. And I have, a huge relationship with Amy and Joellen. And so they're like sisters to me. And so it's not just, friends that are in church, they're family.
Yeah.
They are family. They become a part of your family.
Yes. And again, that's the Wilmington Church of Christ.
Man.
Thank you both for the conversation.
It's been great.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed this.
And I know you had questions coming in like, well, what from our story will people want to hear? Well, I was excited to hear so many different elements that I didn't know about you two. And the comedy that comes with that and the love that comes with that. But the Backstory podcast has been a true blessing for a lot of people. And I have a pastor friend of mine who said, I've got to look into doing this for our church because, so often you see or hear from the ministers on stage or the elders, but, this has taken a very good chance to just zone in on who the church is, the people. The people is not the pastor, it's not the elders, it's the congregation as a whole.
And we're not always perfect because on Sunday you always see you're sitting in church with your straight back and worshiping, and we're not always perfect people.
It's easy to get a false idea, and it's easy to put on a facade for 1 hour once a week, but something I love about our church is when you get to know the people, you see the transparent person. And that's what I love about even our leadership. I always hope that even from a stage, you can see that our leadership is still transparent. They'll let you know we're not perfect.
Well, we're not.
No. No, just get to know us, and it won't take long to discover. But thank you both for jumping on. I can't wait to see what comes of this.
Yes, thank you.